Looking to get into train travel but not sure how to do it?
We're here today to explain everything that you need to know about Amtrak's USA Rail Pass.
Hi, I'm Adam.
And I'm Phoebe.
And we're the couple behind In the Great Wide. We're here today to talk to you about the Amtrak USA Rail Pass. So, what exactly is the Amtrak USA Rail Pass?
So, the USA Rail Pass offers you 10 legs or segments or train rides or bus connections through Amtrak that all have to be used within 30 days of each other. The pass is valid for 120 days after you originally purchase it, but all of the travel has to happen within 30 consecutive days.
Essentially, you have 4 months to use the pass once you buy it, but all the travel needs to happen within a month.
Yes.
Once you start.
Yeah. And we actually had a problem booking our last leg because we were originally told that we just had to get on the train by the 120th day after we had purchased the pass. But then when we went to book it online, it wouldn't let us do it because technically I think the rules are that it has to be completed. That your last train leg has to be completed by the 120th day after you originally buy the pass. They helped us book it because I had been given wrong information by an Amtrak employee. But just know that that is the regular rules.
Now, keep in mind, the Amtrak USA Rail Pass is not an actual ticket. It's just your pass to be able to book tickets on Amtrak trains and buses.
Yes. So you still have to book the individual legs or segments, the individual train rides, but you use the USA Rail Pass to do that so that you're not paying for each individual ride.
Yes. It'll encompass all 10 of those legs, regardless of the cost that it would normally cost when you book them separately.
Yeah. And we met a bunch of people on the trains that were using the USA Rail Passes, but I thought that it was interesting that a lot of people were using the train rides as their vacation itself. They weren't like using it as a mode of transportation to go somewhere like how we were thinking about it.
Right.
They were using the train as their vacation.
But we look at it as a way to get around the country. A lot of the people that we met were essentially taking the train from like San Francisco all the way to Chicago or beyond, and then actually flying back. Like they weren't going to take the train back. It was just a way to see the country going across, and then they were going to fly back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised when they heard that we were like, no, we're using all 10 legs of our passes and we're going across the country and back again. Because a lot of people, it seems like a lot of people don't use all of the legs of their USA Rail Pass, which it could still be a good deal depending on how you're using it. But it's an awesome deal if you are actually using it the way that it's meant to be used. Yeah,
if you plan it out like we did. It actually is a really effective, efficient way of seeing the majority of the country.
Yes.
Now, granted, there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to the Amtrak USA Rail Pass. Like, it is only coach. You cannot pay to upgrade to a sleeper car.
Or to business class.
Yeah. It is strictly coach.
Yeah, I think that we've heard from other people that it used to be an option that you could pay to upgrade to a sleeper car.
Yeah.
So maybe Amtrak will offer that again someday, but who knows? You know, when we used it, we weren't allowed to do that because I did specifically ask and they said no. And I know that this is like the biggest deal breaker for most people on the USA Rail Passes.
Most people are very surprised when they hear that we did the entire thing in coach. And now, granted, the coach seats are much more comfortable than like airline seats. I mean, most people haven't taken Amtrak. They haven't traveled across the country via train, so they think of it as being more like air travel, and it's not.
Yes.
It is much bigger seats. They're wider. They recline back further. They're much more comfortable.
Yeah, the specifics of coach on Amtrak trains vary by route, but we address that in each of our reviews about the specific routes. So you can check out our other videos or blog articles to see that for each specific one that we've been on so far.
Now, there are lines you can't use. The USA Rail Pass is not available on the Acela, the Auto Train, any Canadian stations on the Maple Leaf route, and a few specific throughway buses. For whatever reason, the Canada thing makes sense because it's the USA Rail Pass, but
Right.
the Auto Train also makes sense because you put your car on it and then take it down,
To
from
Florida.
New England to
Yeah.
Florida. So that makes sense. And the Acela, I think, happens to be just probably their most profitable line. I think it gets used a lot.
I think it's faster travel.
It is. Yes, I think
yeah.
that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also cannot travel back and forth between the same two places more than twice with this pass. So you can't just go from like New York to DC to New York to DC. You can't use it as like a commuter style pass like that because they have other multi-ride passes available for those kinds of trips. So this one, the USA Rail Pass, you can't do that. You have to be going to different places.
It definitely affected how we planned our month-long trip to use all 10 legs. But that, to me, honestly, that was kind of part of the fun of it, was trying to figure out the puzzle of how are we going to get all these legs done in 30 days.
Yes, and it did work out.
It did. It did. We used all 10 legs. So what exactly is a leg, according to Amtrak?
So it is any time that you get on a train or bus and then get off again.
That counts as one leg.
Yes. So like for example, when we were traveling on the Coast Starlight from Los Angeles to Emeryville, which is just outside of San Francisco, they offer a bus connection from Emeryville to San Francisco. It's only like a 30-minute ride or something because it just takes you across the bay essentially, but it would have counted as one leg. So we instead opted to not take that bus connection and just take the train to Emeryville. And since we had another train the next day, we just stayed in that area and then got on the train again the next morning.
Yeah, we had a short layover, an overnight layover that we essentially just stayed in Emeryville for the night and then took the California Zephyr the next day to go to Denver.
But if we were planning on staying in San Francisco, we would have just used public transit there or gotten an Uber or something like that from the Emeryville station to go the rest of the way into San Francisco instead of wasting a whole leg of our Amtrak USA Rail Pass on that tiny little bus ride.
A 30-minute bus ride.
Yeah.
When we've used it for 46-hour train rides like the Empire Builder. Yeah, it just seemed a little silly to, but it's their policy and it's how they work it. And it is part of the way that some people use the USA Rail Pass is, they want to get to see a certain person. So they're like, well, I'm not going to, travel as far, so I can use it for that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, just keep that in mind as you are planning out your legs. But there are also no blackout dates.
Yeah, which is a plus.
Yeah, so that's really great. And there is a really generous luggage policy on Amtrak. Each traveler gets to bring 2 personal and 2 carry-on items onto the train for free. Plus you get 2 checked bags for free.
Yeah, essentially 6 items you can bring for free.
Yeah, per person.
Per person. You can actually check up to 2 more bags, but it'll cost you $20 per bag. So you can actually have 4 checked bags in case you're moving your whole house or something. I'm not sure how you would need to have 8 pieces, but you never know. I mean, there were people that had stuff they were bringing in, they checked, or a carry-on that they used that was obviously like, oh yeah, that's full of stuff.
Yeah.
Of things you wouldn't just be like, I'm traveling. You know, they're going from A to B.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have that much stuff with us on the train.
No.
Absolutely not. But, you know, if you have certain things that you need to bring with you, medical equipment or whatever, the Amtrak luggage policy is very generous for people who need to have a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah, we used one check bag between the two of us.
Yeah.
Because it was just easier when we were going to be traveling so much. But we also had like our a personal bag that we brought with us with like change of clothes and things for the overnight, and toiletries and things so we could freshen up. And we also had like our backpacks with our computers and video equipment and stuff like that.
And then we had a food bag.
And a food bag, yeah. So
Yes.
it worked out. I mean, we ended up using majority of the carry-on personal item check bag
Allowance.
stuff allowance.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it worked out, and we never had to worry about it. Nobody ever was like, oh my God, that's too many things or whatever.
Yeah, it was never a problem.
It was never an issue.
There are size and weight limitations to the bags that you can bring on, but they are not nearly as strict about that stuff for carry-ons as airlines are. They do weigh your bags for check bags, though, so make sure that you're within the limitations there.
Not all stations and routes offer checked luggage, so make sure you look. We had a couple routes where we had to take our very large checked bag on with us. Luckily, we were able to find some seats where there was space behind us and keep it close. But some of those routes have, you can put your non-checked bag or a checked bag size like down below, like the California Zephyr or the Coast Starlight. They have because it's a double-decker, they have an area where you can put bags. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if I'm not checking it, I'd rather it be closer to me just in case.
Yeah, just to keep an eye on it. But tell us in the comments if you want us to make another video showing you how to find out if your route and station offers checked luggage, because not everyone does.
Yeah. Food and drinks are not included with the USA Rail Passes because you are in coach class.
Yeah, so there is a cafe on board, but you can also bring your own food or non-alcoholic drinks. Mm-hmm. And we have another video coming later this week all about food and drink on Amtrak trains. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss that.
Now, surprisingly, you can bring a pet on the train. They do have a pet policy. Small dogs and cats are welcome on trips up to 7 hours on most routes. There are extra fees, of course. And there's only a max of 5 pets per train. So make sure if you're going to bring your dog or cat that you reserve as far in advance as possible.
Yeah, but none of those restrictions apply to service animals, but they do apply to emotional support animals, so keep that in mind.
You can cancel the whole USA Rail Pass for a full refund at any time during the 120-day window. If you've already booked a leg, you can cancel up to 48 hours in advance before you get on the train for a full refund.
Yeah. If it's within the 48-hour window of you already having booked your first leg of your pass, then there is a 25% cancellation fee.
And once you start traveling, the pass is non-refundable.
Yeah. Once you use the first leg, it's not refundable anymore. But the cost of a USA Rail Pass is $500 per person, which I feel like can sound like a lot for some people, but again, it depends on how you use it, because we traveled across the country and back by train exclusively for a month for this price, really.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do deals. Amtrak will offer deals to get $100 off, so it's only $400. We actually got ours for $300 a person, which was amazing. But I think that was a deal that they were running like once in a lifetime kind of thing, because they were trying to encourage people to start traveling again after the pandemic. But even at the regular $500 price point, it is a great deal if you are using the pass the way that I think it's really meant to be used.
Yeah, and it does seem like they do the $100 off at least once a year, maybe twice a year. So if you sign up for their emails, you'll get an email saying, and then you have 120 days. So it's a good thing to keep track of if you're more flexible with your schedule and being able to travel. But yeah, it's even at $500, it's still a really good deal.
Yeah.
Because if we had done this same trip without the USA Rail Pass, it would have cost us just under $1,000 each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It saved us a ton of money.
Ton of money.
So make sure to, if you want to use the USA Rail Pass, book the pass in advance. Wait for those sales, and if you want to, but even at the $500 price point, it's a good deal. And then map out your whole route. We recommend booking all of your legs before you go just to be safe, because there are some sections of some routes that sell out regularly, such as the California Zephyr, which was our favorite, my favorite at least, during the whole trip. So make sure that you book that as far in advance as possible, just because it can and often does sell out.
It most likely will. There's a section, and look at our California Zephyr review. There's a section in Colorado that is packed. It is packed every day, every time they use it, because it is beautiful, and there's only certain places you can see via the train. So it's packed every time. And if you hadn't booked it beforehand, even coming from San Francisco or Emeryville, you wouldn't be able to book it at all, because it would be full during just that tiny leg, but train's full, sorry.
Yeah, so make sure you book as far in advance as possible. But then while you are on your trip, use the Amtrak app.
Yes.
For sure, because it's so much easier. It has your tickets for each leg that you can see and get checked in and everything while you are traveling. It makes it so much easier than having to keep track of printouts or something like that. And you can make changes at the last minute if you need to.
Yeah, it shows the schedule of your current trip, so you can see where you're at if you're running late, because the conductors do not communicate that info very well. You could ask, but they generally don't. They won't make announcements saying we're late. The one time they actually told us was when we were passing through Philadelphia and a bridge was on fire. And it cost us 5 hours. So, I mean, they had to say something. But for the most part, if they're a couple hours late, it's train travel. They're just like, whatever, it's the way it works. But if you're planning stuff out like we did, you really need to know whether or not you're going to arrive somewhere 4 or 5 hours late. So the app is great for that.
Yeah, and that's another thing to keep in mind as you are planning your route. Don't plan a layover, like a short layover, because the trains, if they're late, you could miss it, and then the next train may not go until the next day or a couple of days later. So
you could be stuck somewhere for a while. Also, the app, when you have the schedule, it helps you to know when the fresh air breaks are going to happen. They happen every so often, so it's good to be able to schedule around that. Now, keep in mind, if you do miss your train, like, for example, you have a short layover and the train goes and the other train's late, your missed train will count as a leg, unless it's their fault.
Yeah, so if you are just like, la-di-da, I'm late for the train, and you miss it, then it will count as one leg off of your USA Rail Pass. But if you miss it because you were getting off another train that was late, then you can call customer service and they can help you rebook it so that you don't lose a leg off of your USA Rail Pass. So if it's your fault, it'll cost you. If it's their fault, it won't, essentially.
So where you can go with the USA Rail Pass is practically anywhere in the country. Most major cities have Amtrak stops.
Yeah.
There's lots of stops in between these major cities and towns of all sizes in pretty much every state. The only states it doesn't have train stations in are South Dakota, Wyoming, Alaska, and obviously Hawaii, because trains don't do well in the water.
Yeah. But our experience on the trains, we had a whole route, like we said, planned out over a month-long trip. So we started in Los Angeles and we took the Coast Starlight up to San Francisco, Emeryville area. And we had an overnight layover there, and then the next morning we got on the California Zephyr to go from Emeryville over to Denver, where we stayed for a few days. So that was leg 2. And then leg 3 for us was on the California Zephyr again, doing the rest of the route from Denver to Chicago.
Yep.
And that counted as a second leg because we had gotten off in Denver and spent a few days and then got back on to go the rest of the way over Chicago. And that was the only one where we had like a short-ish layover.
Yeah,
it was a couple of hours.
That Chicago layover was pretty short. And it could be a little worrisome at times because the trains do end up being late, but it worked out fine for us.
Yes. Yeah. So leg 4 was from Chicago to Pittsburgh. It was just an overnight train on the Capital Limited. Some of those names get confusing sometimes, but it was the Capital Limited. Then we spent a few days in Pittsburgh with some friends. Yep. And then leg 5 was the Pennsylvanian from Pittsburgh to New York City. We had such a great time in New York City.
It was fantastic.
It was my first time there.
Oh, it was great.
And it was great. You know, we had a really good time. After that, we did the Northeast Regional, a short train ride. It was only 4 hours from New York City down to Washington, D.C. Adam's first time in D.C.
DC is amazing, absolutely amazing. Can't wait to go back.
Such a great place to visit if you're traveling on a budget because there's so much free stuff to do in D.C.
Yep.
Then the leg we did after that, I've lost count, but
we went up to Boston
on the Northeast Regional.
I believe that was leg 7.
And so we spent 2 nights in Boston and spent really our only full day there in Salem, Massachusetts.
That was the leg where we were passing through Philadelphia and there was a major delay. It was the only major delay we had during the entire month. There was a couple times where we were an hour, maybe 2 hours late, but it didn't affect us like it did going up to Boston.
Yeah, we essentially lost all of our time hanging out in Boston because the train was late, which was a bummer, but we will go back to Boston.
Yeah, we'll go back to Boston.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then we took the Lakeshore Limited from Boston back over to Chicago. We started heading back west, and that was leg 8. Yes.
Yeah. And we spent some time with some family outside of Chicago, and then we took the Empire Builder from Chicago to Seattle. Was the longest leg that we did, leg 9, through some really fantastically boring scenery. It was 46 hours, it was a long time. But once we got into the Pacific Northwest, it was all worth it because the Pacific Northwest is beautiful.
Yes. After 2 nights on the train, 2 consecutive nights on the train, which was a little brutal. It was a lot brutal, not gonna lie. Yeah. But we woke up the second time on the train in the Pacific Northwest, and it was gorgeous.
Seattle
was so beautiful.
Was amazing. Seattle was fantastic. We really enjoyed Seattle. We do plan on going back there at some point. And then we took our last leg to go back to LA. Took the Coast Starlight again, heading the entire Seattle to LA, the entire route, which it wasn't another overnight, days on each side, but
I think it was like 36 hours or something like that.
But it was great
long.
because you follow the coast for so long. Like, it's just really gorgeous.
That one was very scenic. Yes.
Yeah, especially the end, coming in the end. It was really great.
Yeah, so we used it to visit a lot of cities that we had never been to before, which was awesome. We used it to visit several friends that we hadn't seen in a very long time, which was awesome. But if we were to use the USA Rail Passes again, we would probably try to visit some smaller towns, I think.
Yeah.
Like places that would be harder to fly into.
Yeah. I mean, but if you really want to see the country, this is the way to do it. We visited both coasts. We saw both oceans. We saw everywhere in between.
But train travel, definitely, it's not for everyone because it's slow paced and it can be really boring at times. So you have to be able to bring stuff to entertain yourself that doesn't require Wi-Fi and cell signal and everything, because not all the trains have that.
You actually have to talk to people. It's crazy.
But again, that varies by route, which we talk about in each of our reviews.
Yeah, make sure you
route.
Check out our videos that we did and our articles reviewing each of the train routes we did.
Yeah. And traveling through the countryside, though, in autumn was really breathtaking at times.
Yeah.
We planned the trip out, I think, at a really great time. We got to see the golden aspens in Colorado.
Oh, so pretty.
We got to see some gorgeous autumn colors on the Pennsylvanian, as well as the Lakeshore Limited.
Down through Massachusetts, man. That countryside Massachusetts is gorgeous.
It was so gorgeous to be there in full autumn bloom in
Yeah.
October. It was great. But tell us in the comments where you would take the train to using the USA Rail Pass.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming video about the food and drinks on Amtrak trains.
And if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details of the Amtrak USA Rail Passes so you can plan your own trip, head to our website where we spell out all of the fine print in an easy-to-read format.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the Great Wide somewhere.